Welcome to Tuesday in Holy Week. These are the first three verses of the psalm that's appointed for today, Psalm 71. In you, O Lord, have I taken refuge. Let me never be ashamed. In your righteousness, deliver me and set me free. Incline your ear to me and save me. Be my strong rock, a castle to keep me safe. You are my crag and my stronghold. A number of years ago, I had a fantastic opportunity to spend some time traveling through Northumbria in the north of England, and one of my stops was a day trip to a tiny little island just a stone's throw off the coast called Lindisfarne, or Holy Island. Lindisfarne is magical. It's really just straight out of a fairy tale. It's actually a tidal island, and that means that as the tide comes in, the tiny road that connects the island to the shore gets completely washed out. So for a period of time each day, you are pretty much cut off from land, even though it's only a few hundred yards away. So why am I talking about this lovely little island and making you jealous that you haven't been able to go? In the passage from Psalm 71 I just read, we hear some interesting language about God being our refuge, a strong rock, a castle to keep me safe. Then it goes on to use a word that we don't hear very much anymore. You are my crag, my stronghold. What is a crag? I'm glad you asked. It just so happens that this little island, Lindisfarne, is home to an impressive crag. And on that crag, as if it wasn't impressive enough on its own, is a castle. Lindisfarne Castle. It's literally a stronghold. And it looks like it could be a filming location for Game of Thrones. It's absolutely gorgeous. And these pictures are not an exaggeration. Over the years, it's been home to lots of people and had many uses. At one point, Lindisfarne was a missionary outpost from which Celtic monks and missionaries would venture into the northern parts of England with the good news of God. I spent a whole cloudy, misty December day there just wandering around. The pace of life is slower because there's nowhere to go once the road is washed out. It was one of those days that felt like dusk all day long. I'd been dropped off by a friend I had made along the way who promised to come back and get me when the tide came back in. And he let me in on a little secret. Along the path to the castle, the way separates. You barely notice it if you aren't looking for it. And he said down the lower path that led along a rocky cliff to the beach below, there were ancient monastic prayer holes. Holes cut out of the rock, just big enough for a person to get in. Some even with little seats carved out of the rock inside. He said the monks would sit in those holes that faced across the water to the nearby shore and spend hours meditating and praying for the good of this land they had been sent to. So I walked down the path to the rocky cliff and eventually and dangerously found the holes. Without even thinking about it, I jumped in one and leaned against the seat and looked out across the water to the rest of England. It was a moment I will never forget. Even though the imposing castle was just a little further down the path, this humble little hole in the rock felt more like the refuge of God than anything I've ever felt in my life. God is our refuge. God is our crag. But it's not to wall us off from the rest of humanity. It's to realign our focus and shift our perception of how we interact with the world. We are transformed in the stronghold of God, to love with the love that is transforming us. So, tonight, as you fall asleep, imagine that you are sinking into one of those prayer holes, God surrounding you in the strong, rocky earth. And then ask where you should go with His love when you wake up.